The morning air on Kepler Station felt thick with tension as Cadet Sarah Chen stepped into the Advanced Xenobiology Combat Training Facility. Her boots echoed against the metal flooring, each step measured and deliberate. Around her, fellow cadets from across the galaxy whispered among themselves, their various species creating a symphony of different languages and vocal patterns. Sarah had always been the odd one out. While her classmates came from worlds with advanced technology and superior physical abilities, she was just human. The Valdorians could see in complete darkness and had reflexes 3 times faster than hers. The crystalline hegemony representatives could survive in vacuum for hours and process information at superhuman speeds. The Korathi possessed natural armor, plating, and strength that could crush steel. And then there was Sarah. 5 foot 6 inches of what most species in the galactic community considered primitive biology. Her instructor, Commander HFY, a towering insectoid from the Hive Collective, made no secret of his opinion that humans didn't belong in advanced combat training. Today, Commander HFY announced, his mandibles clicking as he spoke, you will face the Nixhound. A collective shudder went through the assembled cadets. Sarah had read about Nixhounds in her xenobiology texts, but seeing one in person was entirely different. The creature stood 8 feet tall at the shoulder, its midnight black fur seeming to absorb light itself. 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows across its elongated skull glowed with an eerie purple light. Its mouth opened to reveal rows of crystalline teeth that could cut through most known metals. The Nixhound is from the death world Nix Prime, HFY continued, his forearms gesturing toward the massive beast contained behind an energy barrier. Gravity there is 4 times galactic standard. The atmosphere is toxic to most life forms. Temperatures swing from -200 to +400 degrees, and this creature is the apex predator. Sarah watched as the Nixhound paced behind the barrier. Despite its fearsome appearance, something about its movement caught her attention. There was a slight limp in its rear left leg, and the way it held its head suggested pain. More importantly, she noticed how it avoided the bright floodlights aimed at its containment area. The exercise is simple, HFY announced. Take down the creature. Use whatever means necessary. Weapons, technology, teamwork. Prove you're worthy to serve in the Galactic Defense Corps. The first volunteer was Crix, a Valdorian whose species had conquered their homeworld's apex predators centuries ago. He stepped into the arena with confidence, his natural night vision giving him an advantage as the lights dimmed. His people were known as the greatest hunters in the galaxy. Crix moved with fluid grace, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to dodge the Nixhound's initial charge. He fired his plasma rifle with precision, each shot calculated to bring down the beast efficiently. But the creature's natural armor deflected his shots, and its speed in the dim environment surpassed even Valdorian capabilities. Within minutes, Crix was unconscious on the arena floor. The Nixhound stood over him, not harming him further, but clearly victorious. Next came Thys, a representative of the crystalline hegemony. Her species could interface directly with technology and possessed armor-like skin that could withstand extreme temperatures. She entered the arena with a completely different strategy, using electromagnetic pulses and sonic disruption. The Nixhound weathered her technological assault with what seemed like mild annoyance. When Thys attempted to use her natural armor to withstand a physical confrontation, the creature's claws found the weak points in her crystalline structure with surgical precision. She too was defeated. One by one, the cadets tried and failed. The Korathi warrior's strength proved useless when the Nixhound used its superior speed and agility. The aquatic Quellen's advanced tactics were countered by the creature's pack-hunting instincts. Even when facing a single opponent, Commander HFY's mandibles clicked with what Sarah had learned to recognize as satisfaction. Perhaps some of you are beginning to understand why the Galactic Defense Corps maintains such high standards, he said, his compound eyes focusing on Sarah. Cadet Chen, you're the last remaining. Do you wish to attempt this exercise, or would you prefer to transfer to a more suitable program? Sarah felt the weight of every gaze in the facility. She could hear whispered conversations in a dozen languages, most expressing doubt about the human's chances. After all, If species with natural advantages had failed, what hope did a human have? "I'll take the challenge, Commander," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. HFY's mandibles clicked again, this time in what might have been amusement. "Very well. Standard weapons and equipment are available. You have 5 minutes to prepare." Sarah walked to the equipment locker, but instead of reaching for the high-tech weapons her classmates had used, she selected something that made several cadets laugh out loud. She took a simple medical kit, a portable food synthesizer, and a basic camping light. "Cadet Chen," HFY called out. "I believe you've mistaken the equipment locker for a survival kit dispensary. This is a combat exercise." "I understand the assignment, Commander," Sarah replied. "Take down the creature." As she entered the arena, Sarah could hear the betting among her classmates. The odds were not in her favor. Most species considered humans to be irrationally optimistic at best, dangerously naive at worst. The arena lights dimmed, and the energy barrier separating Sarah from the Nixhound dropped. The massive creature turned its 6 glowing eyes toward her, and for a moment, she felt the full weight of millions of years of evolution that had shaped this perfect predator. But Sarah didn't reach for a weapon. Instead, she slowly sat down cross-legged on the arena floor and activated her camping light, setting it to its lowest, warmest setting. The soft glow created a small circle of gentle illumination around her. The Nixhound approached cautiously. Sarah could feel its breath on her face as it sniffed her, trying to understand this strange creature that neither attacked nor fled. Up close, she could see what she had suspected from her earlier observation. The creature wasn't just a mindless killing machine. Its eyes showed intelligence, pain, and something else that made Sarah's heart ache: loneliness. "Hey there, beautiful," Sarah whispered softly. "You're hurting, aren't you?" The Nixhound's head tilted slightly, a gesture so unexpectedly dog-like that Sarah had to suppress a smile. She slowly opened her medical kit and pulled out a bioscanner, moving with deliberate care to avoid startling the creature. "May I?" she asked, holding up the scanner. "I think I can help with that leg." The viewing gallery fell silent. Even Commander HFY had stopped his mandible clicking. On dozens of homeworlds, beings that had evolved to be predators, prey, or something in between watched as a human sat calmly in front of a creature that had defeated some of the galaxy's most formidable warriors. The Nixhound allowed Sarah to scan its injured leg. The results confirmed what she had suspected: an old fracture that had healed poorly, causing chronic pain that would have made the creature more aggressive and defensive than normal. "I can't fix the old injury," Sarah said softly, "but I can help with the pain." She pulled out a broad-spectrum pain relief patch from her medical kit. The Nixhound watched with growing curiosity as she carefully applied it to the creature's leg, her movements gentle and sure. "Better?" she asked. The Nixhound took a few experimental steps, and for the first time since entering the arena, it moved without the slight limp Sarah had noticed earlier. The creature's posture changed, becoming less defensive and more curious. Sarah then activated her food synthesizer, programming it for a high-protein, nutrient-rich meal suitable for a carnivorous predator. The device hummed quietly and produced what looked like a perfect steak, seasoned with minerals that would appeal to the Nixhound's enhanced senses. "You're probably hungry too," she said, placing the food within reach. "When was the last time someone fed you something that wasn't just standard rations?" The Nixhound sniffed the offering cautiously, then took a tentative bite. Its eyes widened in what Sarah could only interpret as surprise and pleasure. It had been so long since the creature had tasted food that wasn't just designed for survival. As the Nixhound ate, Sarah continued talking in soft, reassuring tones. She told it about Earth, about the creatures her ancestors had domesticated and befriended. She talked about the concept of partnership rather than domination, of understanding rather than conquest. The viewing gallery remained completely silent. This wasn't what anyone had expected. Where was the combat? Where was the display of technological superiority or physical prowess? But Sarah understood something that her classmates had missed. The exercise wasn't really about taking down the creature through force. It was about understanding what taking down actually meant in the context of dealing with unknown alien life. When the Nixhound finished eating, it looked at Sarah with what seemed like a different expression in its 6 eyes. She slowly reached out her hand, palm up, letting the creature decide whether to make contact. The Nixhound sniffed her hand, then gently bumped it with its massive head. Sarah began to scratch behind what she guessed were its ears, and the creature's eyes closed in contentment. A low rumbling sound emerged from its chest, a cross between a purr and a sigh. "You're not a monster at all, are you?" Sarah whispered. "You're just scared and hurt and alone." She looked up at the viewing gallery, where dozens of beings from across the galaxy watched in stunned silence. Then she stood up, and the Nixhound rose with her, staying close to her side. "Commander HFY," Sarah called out, her voice carrying clearly in the silent arena. "I believe I've completed the exercise." "Cadet Chen." HFY's voice crackled over the arena's speakers. "The objective was to take down the creature. Not to." He paused, searching for words. "Not to befriend it." Sarah smiled, one hand resting gently on the Nixhound's massive head. "With respect, Commander, I have taken it down. It's no longer aggressive, no longer a threat. It's calm, well-fed, and under control. Isn't that what we really want when we encounter potentially dangerous alien life? Not destruction, but understanding?" The silence stretched for long moments. Sarah could practically feel the mental gears turning in minds that had been shaped by entirely different evolutionary pressures and cultural assumptions. Finally, Commander HFY's voice came over the speakers again. "The exercise is concluded. All cadets report to debriefing room 7 in 1 hour." As Sarah led the Nixhound toward the arena exit, the creature walking calmly beside her like a well-trained companion, she could hear the explosion of conversation that erupted in the viewing gallery. Voices in a dozen languages all asked the same basic question. How had the human done what seasoned warriors could not? The answer, Sarah knew, lay in a fundamental difference in how humans approached problems. Where others saw an enemy to be defeated, she had seen a creature to be understood. Where others brought weapons, she had brought compassion. And in that moment, Sarah Chen realized that being human in a galaxy full of seemingly superior species might not be the disadvantage everyone assumed it was. It might, in fact, be exactly what the galaxy needed. The debriefing room buzzed with tension as Sarah entered, the Nixhound padding silently beside her. She had spent the last hour in the medical bay with the creature, allowing Dr. Ven, the station's xenobiologist, to conduct a thorough examination. The results had been illuminating and had only added to the growing controversy surrounding her unconventional approach. Commander HFY stood at the front of the room, his forearms crossed in a gesture that Sarah had learned indicated deep contemplation among his species. The other cadets sat in their designated areas, organized by species as was standard protocol. The segregation had never bothered Sarah before. But now it seemed to highlight exactly what made her approach different. "Cadet Chen," HFY began, his mandibles clicking slowly, "Dr. Ven has provided his preliminary analysis of your interaction with the Nixhound. His findings raise several questions about our standard protocols." Sarah remained standing, one hand resting gently on the Nixhound's head. The creature had refused to be separated from her after the exercise, showing signs of distress whenever she moved too far away. Dr. Ven had theorized that the creature had formed what he called an immediate attachment bond, something previously undocumented in Nixhound behavior. The medical scan you performed revealed that the creature had been suffering from chronic pain for an estimated 18 months, HFY continued. This pain would have significantly impacted its behavior, making it more aggressive and less predictable than a healthy specimen. Crix, the Valdorian who had been the first to face the creature, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Are you suggesting that we failed because the creature was injured? That seems like making excuses for inferior performance." Dr. Ven stepped forward, his crystalline form refracting the room's lights into small rainbows. "Actually, Cadet Crix, my analysis suggests the opposite. The creature's injured state would have made it more dangerous to conventional approaches, not less. Pain increases stress hormones, which enhance aggressive responses. Cadet Chen succeeded not despite the creature's condition, but because she recognized and addressed it. Sarah watched as her classmates processed this information. She could see the confusion in their expressions. Most had been raised in cultures where strength was measured by the ability to overcome obstacles through force or superior technology. But she didn't fight it at all, protested Thys, her voice carrying the harmonic overtones characteristic of her species. How can you call it a victory if there was no combat? That's exactly the point, Sarah said quietly, and the room fell silent. The objective wasn't to fight the creature, it was to take it down. I accomplished that objective with 0 casualties, 0 damage to equipment, and 0 risk to station personnel. Admiral Korath, a massive draconian whose species had a reputation as the fiercest warriors in the galaxy, had been observing from the back of the room. Now he stepped forward, his scales catching the light as he moved. Cadet Chen, Admiral Korath rumbled, his voice like distant thunder. Your approach raises fundamental questions about how we train our future officers. For 10,000 years, my people have solved problems through superior firepower and tactical dominance. We have never been defeated in direct combat. The Nixhound sensed the tension in the room and moved slightly closer to Sarah, but showed no signs of aggression. Instead, it simply positioned itself where it could keep all the potential threats in view, while remaining ready to defend its new companion if necessary. Yet, Admiral Korath continued, watching today's exercise, I find myself wondering if we have been approaching xeno-contact protocols with unnecessary assumptions about the nature of threats and solutions. Commander Zexhi's compound eyes focused on the Admiral. Admiral, surely you're not suggesting that we abandon proven combat methodologies in favor of... He gestured at Sarah and the Nixhound. Whatever this is. What this is, Dr. Venn interjected, is the first recorded instance of peaceful first contact protocol with a Nixhound. These creatures are classified as Class 5 aggressive predators. Standard protocol calls for immediate containment or elimination if encountered in the wild. But Cadet Chen has demonstrated that classification might be based on incomplete understanding. Sarah felt the weight of the moment. Around her, representatives of the galaxy's most powerful species were questioning assumptions that had guided their civilizations for millennia, and it all centered on her decision to treat an alien predator with compassion rather than force. If I may, Sarah said, and the room's attention focused on her again. I'd like to explain why I chose the approach I did. Admiral Korath gestured for her to continue. When I observed the Nixhound before the exercise, I noticed several behavioral indicators that suggested it was not acting according to its normal patterns. The limp was obvious. But more importantly, it was avoiding the bright lights and showing signs of defensive rather than aggressive posturing. She paused, gathering her thoughts. On Earth, we learned long ago that apparent aggression in predators often masks other issues: hunger, pain, fear, or territorial concerns. Address the underlying cause, and the aggressive behavior often resolves itself. Cadet Vorth, a heavily armored Korathi whose people were known for their direct approach to problem-solving, spoke up. But that's an enormous risk. What if you had been wrong? What if the creature had attacked you while you were being gentle with it? Sarah met his gaze steadily. Then I would have failed the exercise and possibly been injured. But I wasn't wrong because I paid attention to what the creature was actually telling me through its behavior, rather than what I expected it to do based on its reputation. The Nixhound, seeming to sense that it was being discussed, looked up at Sarah with what could only be described as trust in its 6 eyes. The transformation from the aggressive creature that had defeated seasoned warriors to this calm, almost domestic-seeming companion was so dramatic that several cadets were still staring in disbelief. Dr. Venn activated a holographic display showing brain scans of the Nixhound. These readings are particularly interesting. The creature's stress hormone levels dropped by 70% during its interaction with Cadet Chen. More significantly, its brain activity shows patterns consistent with what we might call contentment or satisfaction. Impossible, muttered Cadet Zor, whose people, the Insectoid Hive Collective, operated on pure logic and efficiency. Predatory species don't form emotional attachments to prey species. But I'm not prey to it, Sarah pointed out. I never presented myself as prey. I sat down, made myself seem smaller and less threatening, and offered help rather than challenge. The Nixhound responded to the context I created, not to some predetermined script about predator-prey relationships. Admiral Korath walked closer to Sarah and the Nixhound. The creature watched him approach but showed no signs of fear or aggression, though it did position itself slightly more protectively near Sarah. "May I touch it?" the Admiral asked. Sarah looked down at the Nixhound. "That's not really my decision to make," she said. "Would you like to try approaching slowly and letting it sniff your hand first?" The sight of the galaxy's most fearsome warrior following the advice of a human cadet about how to approach an alien predator was not lost on anyone in the room. Admiral Korath knelt down slowly and extended his massive, clawed hand palm up toward the Nixhound. The creature sniffed cautiously, then allowed the Admiral to scratch under its chin. A low rumbling sound indicated its approval. "Remarkable," Admiral Korath murmured. "In all my years of combat, I've never seen a Nixhound behave this way." "Because you've only encountered them in combat situations," Sarah explained. "They were defending their territory or their young, or they were in pain and lashing out. This one is fed, comfortable, and not feeling threatened. It has no reason to be aggressive." Commander Zexhi's mandibles clicked rapidly, which Sarah had learned was a sign of significant mental activity among his species. "Cadet Chen, are you suggesting that our entire approach to xenobiological threats is fundamentally flawed?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "I'm suggesting that maybe we should try understanding before we try conquering. Not every alien creature or species we encounter has to be an enemy. Some of them might just need help." The room fell quiet again, as the implications of her words sank in. For species that had spent thousands of years establishing their dominance through military might and technological superiority, the idea that there might be alternatives was almost incomprehensible. Cadet Lyra, one of the few other humans in the program, spoke up from her position in the back of the room. "Sarah, what you did was incredible, but how do we know this approach would work with other species? The Nixhound might be uniquely responsive to this kind of treatment." It was a fair question, and Sarah had been thinking about it since the exercise ended. "We don't know," she admitted. "But we also don't know that it wouldn't work. What we do know is that our current approach of meeting every unknown with force has led to unnecessary conflicts and misunderstandings." Dr. Venn projected another hologram, this one showing historical data about first contact situations. "Actually, reviewing our records, I'm finding several instances where initial hostile contact was later resolved through more diplomatic means. In each case, the eventual peaceful resolution revealed underlying factors that, if addressed earlier, might have prevented conflict entirely." Admiral Korath straightened up from where he had been petting the Nixhound. "What are you proposing, Dr. Venn?" "I'm proposing that we consider revising our xeno-contact protocols to include what we might call empathetic assessment as a first response option, rather than defaulting immediately to combat readiness." The suggestion sent ripples of shock through the assembled cadets. Combat readiness had been the foundation of galactic civilization for as long as anyone could remember. The idea of approaching the unknown with anything other than superior firepower seemed almost heretical, but Sarah noticed something interesting. While the alien cadets seemed shocked by the suggestion, several of them were also looking thoughtful. And more than a few were glancing at the Nixhound, which had settled down next to Sarah's chair and was contentedly allowing Admiral Korath to continue scratching behind its ears. "Commander," Sarah said, "I'd like to request permission to continue working with the Nixhound. I think there's a lot we could learn from each other." Zexhi's mandibles stopped clicking entirely, a sign of complete surprise. "Cadet Chen, the Nixhound is a dangerous predator, not a research project." "Is it dangerous?" Sarah asked. "Or have we just never given it a chance to be anything else?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Around the room, representatives of a dozen species found themselves confronting assumptions they had never thought to question. The Nixhound, oblivious to the philosophical revolution it was helping to inspire, yawned hugely, showing its impressive teeth, then settled its massive head on Sarah's lap for a nap. The sight of the fearsome predator behaving like an oversized pet was so incongruous that several cadets actually laughed. And in that moment of laughter, Sarah realized that she had accomplished something more significant than just passing a training exercise. She had opened a door to possibilities that none of them had imagined. 3 months later, Sarah walked through the corridors of Kepler Station with a confidence that still surprised her classmates. The Nixhound, now officially designated as her xenobiological research partner, walked beside her, wearing a specially designed harness that marked it as a station resident rather than a contained specimen. The transformation in both Sarah and the creature had been remarkable. The Nixhound, whom Sarah had named Nova for the star-like patterns in its fur that only became visible in certain lighting, had become something unprecedented in galactic records, a fully integrated alien predator serving alongside humanoid species. But the changes went far deeper than one successful partnership. Word of the incident had spread throughout the Galactic Defense Corps, sparking debates on dozens of worlds about the nature of strength, the definition of victory, and the possibilities that lay hidden in their approach to the unknown. Sarah's morning routine now included a stop at the xenobiology lab, where Dr. Venn had established what he called the Empathetic Contact Protocol Research Division. It was a fancy name for what amounted to Sarah, Nova, and a growing collection of previously dangerous alien specimens that were being re-evaluated using her methods. "Morning, Dr. Venn," Sarah called out as she entered the lab. Nova immediately trotted over to greet the crystalline scientist, who had become one of the creature's favorite people on the station. "Ah, Sarah, Nova, Doctor." Venn's harmonic voice carried notes of excitement. "Perfect timing. I've received word that Admiral Korath wants to see the results of Project Harmony." Project Harmony was the official designation for their experimental program. Over the past 3 months, they had successfully established peaceful contact with 7 different species that had previously been classified as aggressive or unmanageable. The results had been so dramatic that high-ranking officials from across the galaxy were beginning to take notice. As they made their way to the main briefing room, Sarah reflected on how much had changed. Her fellow cadets no longer whispered about the primitive human who didn't belong in advanced training. Instead, they watched her with a mixture of respect and curiosity, many asking to observe her methods with newly encountered species. The briefing room was packed with representatives from major galactic civilizations. Admiral Korath stood at the front, his imposing presence commanding immediate attention. But Sarah noticed that his expression had changed over the months. Where once she had seen only warrior's pride, now there was something softer, more thoughtful. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications," Admiral Korath began. 3 months ago, we witnessed something that challenged our fundamental assumptions about xenobiological contact protocols. Today, we review the results of our expanded research into what has become known as the Empathetic Contact Protocol. A holographic display showed statistics that made several delegates lean forward in surprise. Successful, peaceful contact, 93%. Casualties during contact attempts, 0. Equipment damage, 0. Time from initial contact to stable relationship, average of 4 days compared to the previous average of 6 weeks for traditional containment protocols. "The numbers speak for themselves," Admiral Korath continued. "But numbers don't tell the whole story. Dr. Venn, would you present your findings?" Dr. Venn's crystalline form caught the light as he activated another display. "What we've discovered is that many species classified as aggressive were actually exhibiting stress responses to our contact methods. When we approached them with what they perceived as threatening behavior, they naturally responded defensively." The display showed before and after brain scans of various alien creatures. The difference in stress hormone levels was dramatic across all species tested. "But the most significant finding," Dr. Venn continued, "is that every species we've contacted using the empathetic protocol has demonstrated previously unknown cooperative behaviors. They're not just passive or neutral, they actively want to help and work together once basic trust is established." Delegate Threx, a warrior poet from the Draconian Empire, stood up. "Dr. Venn, these results seem almost too extraordinary to believe. Are you suggesting that centuries of military doctrine have been based on misunderstanding?" Before Dr. Venn could respond, Nova suddenly stood up from where she had been lying beside Sarah's chair. The Nyx hound's 6 eyes focused on something beyond the briefing room's windows, and a low, growling sound emerged from her chest. "Nova, what is it?" Sarah asked, immediately alert. In the months they had worked together, she had learned to trust the creature's enhanced senses completely. Nova moved to the window and placed her massive paws on the sill, her body tense with alertness. Sarah followed and looked out into space, where she could see the approaching outline of an unidentified vessel. "Admiral," Sarah called out. "Nova's detecting something approaching the station." Unknown contact. The room immediately shifted into alert mode. Admiral Korath activated the station's sensor display, confirming what Nova had somehow sensed before their sophisticated equipment. "Unknown vessel, configuration unlike anything in our databases," the Admiral announced. "They're not responding to our standard greeting protocols." Through the window, Sarah could see the vessel more clearly now. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of anything in the Galactic fleet, with an organic appearance that suggested biological, rather than technological construction. "Admiral," Sarah said suddenly, "request permission to attempt contact using the empathetic protocol." The room fell silent. Several delegates looked shocked at the suggestion. Delegate Korth from the Military Council stood up abruptly. "Absolutely not," Korth declared. "Unknown contact protocols require full defensive posture until intentions can be determined. We don't even know if these beings are hostile." "That's exactly the point," Sarah replied. "We don't know if they're hostile. But if we greet them with weapons and shields raised, we're guaranteeing that they'll perceive us as a threat." Nova turned from the window and looked directly at Sarah, then moved to the door of the briefing room. Her behavior was clear. She wanted to go somewhere, and she wanted Sarah to follow. "Admiral Korath studied the sensor readings. The vessel has stopped just outside our standard defensive perimeter. No weapons signatures detected. But the size alone represents a potential threat. Or," Sarah suggested, "it represents someone who needs a very large ship for very large beings, or a very large number of beings, or beings who require a very specific environment to survive." Dr. Venn activated his personal scanner and pointed it toward the unknown vessel. "I'm detecting massive biosignatures. Whatever's on that ship, it's alive, and there's a lot of it." Nova moved to Sarah and gently took her sleeve in her teeth, tugging toward the door. The message was unmistakable. "Admiral," Sarah said, "Nova thinks we should go to the docking bay. She's never been wrong about this kind of thing." The suggestion sent murmurs of disbelief through the assembled delegates. Using an alien predator as a diplomatic advisor seemed like madness to most of the gathered representatives, but Admiral Korath had spent the last 3 months reviewing the results of Sarah's methods. Every successful contact, every peaceful resolution, every breakthrough in interspecies cooperation had started with similar suggestions that had seemed impossible at the time. "All delegations will remain here," Admiral Korath decided. "Cadet Chen, myself, and a minimal security detail will proceed to Docking Bay 7. Dr. Venn, continue monitoring from here and provide support as needed." As they made their way through the station's corridors, Nova led the way with obvious purpose. Her behavior reminded Sarah of how working dogs back on Earth would guide their handlers towards specific objectives, confident in their superior senses. The docking bay was enormous, designed to accommodate vessels from species with widely varying environmental needs. As they entered, Sarah could see the unknown ship through the transparent aluminum viewing wall. Up close, its organic appearance was even more pronounced, with what looked like natural ridges and patterns across its hull. Nova approached the viewing wall and placed both front paws against it, looking directly at the alien vessel. Then she did something Sarah had never seen before. She began to emit a complex series of sounds that weren't quite howls, but weren't quite words either. "She's trying to communicate with them," Sarah realized. "Nova, are you talking to whoever's on that ship?" As if in response to Nova's sounds, the alien vessel began to glow with a soft, bioluminescent light. Patterns moved across its surface like neural networks firing, creating a display of stunning beauty. "They're responding," Admiral Korath said quietly. The question is, to what? Sarah watched Nova's behavior carefully. The Nyx hound was completely focused on the ship, her entire body language expressing something Sarah had learned to recognize as hopeful anticipation. I think, Sarah said slowly, Nova recognizes something about these beings. Maybe they're from her home system. Or maybe they're related to her species somehow. The alien vessel extended what appeared to be a biological docking tube toward the station. The movement was slow and deliberate, clearly designed to appear non-threatening. Admiral, Sarah said, I request permission to be part of the contact team. Admiral Korath looked at her for a long moment. Cadet Chen, if you're wrong about this, if these beings are hostile, you could be walking into a situation that no amount of empathy can resolve. Sarah looked down at Nova, who looked back at her with complete trust in her 6 eyes. Admiral, if I'm right, we might be about to make contact with a species that could change our understanding of what's possible in the galaxy. And if I'm wrong, then we'll deal with that situation when it happens. The docking tube sealed against the station's airlock with a soft hissing sound. Atmospheric readings showed that the environment inside was compatible with most galactic standard life forms. As the airlock cycled open, Sarah felt her heart racing with anticipation and just a touch of fear. Nova pressed close against her side, offering comfort and support. What emerged from the alien vessel was unlike anything in galactic records. The beings were enormous, easily 12 feet tall, with bodies that seemed to shift and flow like controlled liquid. They moved with grace despite their size, and they were singing. The song was complex and beautiful, harmonies weaving together in patterns that seemed to resonate directly with Sarah's emotions. Nova responded immediately, adding her own voice to theirs, in a greeting that transcended species boundaries. The lead being approached slowly, its form stabilizing into something more humanoid as it came closer. When it spoke, its voice was like music made of words. We have been searching, it said in perfect galactic standard, for those who understand the song of peace. Your companion called to us with the old harmonies, the ones we thought were lost. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes as she understood what was happening. You're Nova's people, aren't you? Not the same species, but something related. We are the singers, the being replied. And your companion carries within her the memory of songs from before the time of silence, when all beings spoke the language of harmony instead of the language of war. Admiral Korath stepped forward, his warrior's instincts warring with the evidence of his own eyes and ears. You're saying that the Nyx hound is connected to your species? All life is connected, the singer replied. But some connections run deeper than others. Your companion remembers what others have forgotten. That strength comes not from conquest, but from harmony. That victory is not about defeating others, but about finding ways for all to thrive together. Nova moved between Sarah and the singer, bringing them together. As Sarah placed her hand on the alien being's flowing form, she felt a sensation like music flowing through her veins. Images flashed through her mind. Vast networks of peaceful civilizations, technologies based on cooperation rather than domination, worlds where different species worked together to create beauty beyond imagination. This is what we offer, the singer said. This is what your companion knew was possible, even when others could only see her as a threat to be contained or destroyed. Sarah looked around the docking bay, where Admiral Korath stood with an expression of wonder she had never seen on his face before. Through the comm system, she could hear excited chatter from the briefing room as the other delegates watched the proceedings. How many of your people are there? Sarah asked. How many stars are there? The singer replied. How many worlds? How many possibilities for harmony? If beings choose cooperation over conflict, the implications hit Sarah like a physical force. This wasn't just about one successful contact. This was about a fundamental shift in how galactic civilization could operate. Nova looked up at Sarah and made a sound that was unmistakably contentment. Around them, the singers continued their beautiful harmonies, welcoming the humans and their allies into a larger community that operated on principles Sarah was only beginning to understand. As she stood there, surrounded by beings who had chosen peace over war, and harmony over dominance. Sarah realized that her simple act of compassion toward one frightened, hurting creature had opened the door to possibilities beyond anyone's wildest imagination. The galaxy would never be the same.